So let's welcome our speakers. Natalia, would you like to go first and introduce yourself?
Yes, I was just in the middle of trying to take a picture for the Fig Jam. Hi, my name's Natalia. I am a design system manager at Datadog and previously at GitHub. So I love design systems and I love giving hot takes. So I'm really excited to be here with a really cool group of people.
Brian?
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Brian. I originally was working at Washington Post, working on design systems there. Now I'm over at Yahoo, working with a great bunch of designers there, figuring out things system-wise, continue to pay down that enterprise. But it's exciting to be here. I just want to have these. I love these conversations. I love design systems similarly, and I'm just excited to hear from Natalia and Tiago on their takes.
Tiago, would you like to go next?
Yeah, it's me now, right? Like I'm Tiago. I'm the mobile design system lead for Volvo Cars. At least on paper, I got laid off about like 1 month ago, but it's not a sad thing. I'm actually really looking forward to what's gonna come next after this, and just enjoying like the break since I got like a few months of notice period and still getting paid. So all fun. Looking forward to renting a little bit with you guys.
Love it. This is great. So thank you very much for joining the session. And my name is Farid. I'm going to host this session today. Let's start the discussion. Natalia, from your perspective, why would we need to measure the impact of the design system?
Okay, so you know what I'm going to say already, to calibrate it, because we're all doing work and we all want to make sure that the work we do has an impact. So how do we know which decisions to make, which direction we're going? To validate that direction, we have to have some sort of metrics and data points to guide our actions and decisions.
Love it. So, Brian, do you know like what kind of main storylines will be important? I feel like the important part of the metrics is to have a proper storyline and then back it up with some data points, right? When it comes to the storyline, what kind of stories have you tried or what kind of things are working or not working? I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it really depends on where you are looking at the design maturity model. Like it depends where you are to really start thinking about what does impact mean to you at the current relative space that you are a design system. Are you starting from scratch? Are you really digging deep in this kind of big scaled system and you're not quite sure where the adoption is maybe? So the stories might begin really just, I would always suggest starting with the people that you know who are already consuming it, who are already interacting with it, or maybe the team you're starting to build with, and start learning about people's pain points first. And you see how far if your design system's helping in that aspect. So there might be perceived consistency and quality, or maybe stories around design and engineering confidence when they're shipping together. All of these kind of things, which are qualitative, tend to help us in a way understand how our design system is functioning or impacting a specific operations or the outcome of speed, as many folks tend to look at design systems as.
But I really like your point about like mapping your design system maturity with the ways how you can measure things, right? On the UI kit, maybe it could be very simple. On the design library, you can start focusing on the people and pull some metrics from Figma Analytics as a starting point. And the design system, this is when design, code, and content is together, and we can focus more on the collaboration metrics and feel capture how many design and code things are actually mapped together, and if there are any deviations. The level 4 is to track actual adoption. Love it. Tiago, do you have any interesting thoughts on the way how to communicate the impact of the design system? Like what kind of stories are working for your teams?
Yeah, I think like I was just nodding along with everything that Natalia and Brian said. And I'm also thinking like it just occurred to me, we didn't think about this before, but I didn't have like last year dedicated engineers for the mobile design system at Volvo. And a new PM just came in and she was like, let's down prioritize everything design system. One of the ways that I kind of managed to fix that a little bit was to go around doing a basically return on investment presentation showing like how much money we saved by doing design system in code via the central team. And I think it took like 3 months or something like that of like insisting, and I finally got like a dedicated team So it actually works sometimes. It's not like hit and miss. It's not like silver bullet, right? But it helps when you have these situations where people are saying like, "Oh, we're not going to do that because that doesn't have value." And then if you come up with a very strong argument for, "No, this really has way more value than everything else that you're doing right now."
I have a hot
But
take for that
Nata,
already. I'm gonna interrupt
please,
and say
please.
hot take. Why in this year 2025 are we entertaining the conversation that a core bit of infrastructure needs buy-in? Think about how many successful companies who have scaled, needed to scale their brand and design, have all independently really come to the conclusion that design systems should exist. And yet should we have a back end? What's the ROI on having it's like a well-architected front end, the design infrastructure. You want to scale, you need a design system. And so I wonder if maybe the conversation, instead of like having to do defensive maneuvers, we've all done it, we've all been there. There's a different conversation between defensive maneuvers and should design be respected as a discipline? Is design engineering a discipline? What are we really talking about is my favorite question, because are we talking about impact or do you not respect what I do? And I think that's a
Love
good
it.
baseline to start at. That's my first hot take. That's
Love it.
Yeah.
Natalia, how to explain that? Like, would you prepare some kind of slides and show, like, here are the top leaders on the market. They all have design systems, and that's the proof that without design systems, like, it's really hard to move fast in this, like, new market.
I think I would just step back a few layers deeper. I really want to understand the why as a designer. Why are we having this conversation? Because if I'm trying to convince someone of the impact of something they don't see a value in, I'm already going to lose. For me, a lot of times it's like the recognition that everybody is doing their best. Everybody is like a bunch of smart people doing the best they can with the information they have. So for me, before I start going, here are the metrics, here's the here the plethora of facts and figures, receipts ready to drop, I want to understand the person asking the question and why and what pressures they're under, what is driving them to want to cut a core piece of infrastructure. Is it working too well? Did we not tell the story well enough? Or do I get so curious, because it's not like just people hate design systems. It's that we do a good job. And if we do a good job, then it looks like we're not doing anything at all. I think understanding which conversation we're really having is at the heart of it. And then like, yeah, I'll get out receipts all day and night. I've got tons of info. Like which conversation are we really having here?
Love it.
Just to add
Yeah, I
for
was gonna add there.
the fun factor on what you just said, the answer was actually quite simple. Like I found that someone that I worked with also worked with this person in the past, and they had a track record of basically down prioritizing design.
Then it's you just don't value design in general. And I think it's a whole separate aside. Have you ever been able to convince someone of the value? Like, you got to figure out something else, a different avenue. It might be a broader conversation, or might be building a relationship with that person to fully understand, like, where did it go wrong that you realized design, which is like a business differentiator, design as a discipline, like, where did you get burned and how can we fix that? Maybe that's the conversation I want to know. Like, dive into the history before starting to justify, argue, defend, or explain the work you're doing. Ask questions.
I also think that like there's a danger of allowing the conversation to be set up by someone who doesn't understand the abstraction that is design systems. So a lot of times we have folks, and it's not their fault, you know, we have higher up C-suite or maybe as low as like a product manager or whomever it may be, who is a bit on the defense because their mind understands that kind of the clear impact to the bottom line. Um, but design systems are, I would say, like when Natalia says, it's a part of how we work as designers and engineers. It's almost to say like, don't do accessibility or like don't do good design or don't, you know, lint your code to make sure that you're following the best practices. It's part of our work, and to understand it as something as like an addition or supplementary to our work allows the conversation to be driven away from us, and we're kind of stuck at trying to explain how my button that's standardized all across, you know, the entire product is driving revenue. That's such a hard conversation to have, and you're almost set up for failure in that scenario. Whereas like if you talk about it, It's functional. Whether they want to support it, you have a supported team or not, there's going to be some level of agreement between a design and engineer to actually accept and work around these kind of common patterns to work efficiently. Like if you want to be good at your job, that's what you're going to do, system or not, in a formal sense. I think design systems are a take or an approach to truly formalize that specific part of the operation to drive efficiency in the way that we understand it. And sometimes, and I'll be realistic, sometimes it's really hard to say, hey, it's going to help ship X product or it's going to help
Mhm.
ship X feature. But it does give us the ability to work a lot better as a entire org. And I have seen time and time again in all these different types and our colleagues apart, they all have expressed that the friction, the perceived kind of confidence that is happening between design and engineer have just gone through the roof when you have some level of a source of truth. Even though it's not the best one, but it is a source of truth that is constantly being iterated and rallied around. You just can't trade that at any point, business aside.
I feel like sometimes metaphors get the point across. And it's like somebody saying, like, how many rooms are we booking as a result of having plumbing in this hotel? And it's the customers aren't saying they love the toilets, so they must be useless. It's like, yeah, but you need plumbing. And no customer is gonna be like, I'm here because of the fact that you have basic infrastructure and no, you can't. It's just such a default for me. And I think maybe that's the trap we fall into as practitioners of like design infrastructure, design systems is like, what do you mean, no plumbing? You mean I have to justify why we should have a sink and some plumbing in this building? I can do that, but I can't believe we're having this conversation again. And sometimes you don't see the connection between, sometimes the connection is only obvious to people who have been in it a while, where it's like, hey, if you deprioritize design systems, it's just start the clock until you start hearing the conversation about like, how's our design quality? Oh, and then back to the time of the circle, back to investing in infrastructure again. So.
Love it. I really like your point that design system is infrastructure, right? So this is like a good message to say that it's not like nice to have. It helps us to unify things horizontally across the whole organization, enable better things and higher level of craft. Well, a quick summary of everything that we discussed, right? So the first thing, when it comes to the storylines, it's important to understand the company objectives so that your design system storyline will fit into the company business objectives. The second part is the audience-based storylines, right? Some people, you need to understand to whom you are presenting. It might be design leader, it might be engineering leader, it might be product leader. So the storyline might shift a little bit, and the data points that you would like to have as a part of your metric story might be different. And the third part is the design system education, right? It's not only about showing numbers, but also educating people on what's the value of the design system if they don't understand. Here's a quick 3 minutes video from our team explaining the value, and maybe also capturing some qualitative feedback, saying like, here's the feedback from the product leader who tried our design system guidelines when it comes to AI delivery, and they were able to accelerate their go-to-market by X amount of days. Okay, great. There is a question. How do you deal with scenarios where the product person is not involved in the requirement sharing process? Rather, it is communicating via the BA, business analyst, I guess, with minimal to no questions asked.
Seems like a
Uh,
very specific question, but I'm not quite sure what we're aiming for.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's really speaking about the requirements of how metrics are shared out. And when they say involved in the requirements of sharing process rather than communicated in business out. I mean, that's my guess. If that's the case, like in a world where you have to have product involved in terms of how the format of your metrics, which makes sense to a degree. I think going back to your point for it around the audience of the product, like who is the audience there? And if a product manager may not understand, I don't know, maybe adoption metrics or specific things that we might be accustomed to that are more informative to our planning and less so of like, how does this help me get my feature across or my initiative across when it comes to my OKRs? I think that piece in itself for me it's an ongoing conversation. I don't think there is one way of presenting to a certain person who may not fully get that click of like understanding what it is. And it isn't that we need to cater to every single person who doesn't understand systems, but I do think there is a due diligence for us to just kind of reach across the aisle, so to speak, and make sure that our product partners are a part of the journey of what we're creating. And usually that means like opening it up lowering the bar of contribution, because when they think of the design systems, it's usually in moments when they're actually creating or developing a feature of some sort, and they say, hey, this is not there, or I need this variation, or this is not working well, and they get that feedback. That's the moment you want to capture that. So when that person comes back around and say, hey, how does this help me, drive my initiative? And I can say, hey, in the past, you have contributed these kind of, feedbacks, and we have answered, and here's an example of that. And I've captured it in some format, whether in Jira or wherever it may be. But yeah, I would say hopefully that answers a little bit, or would be my take on that, assuming you're talking about metrics.
Love it, love it. There are some questions that are a little bit out of the scope of the discussion. We will talk about only metrics today, but feel free to take a look into previous recording. We spoke about the team management and some of the governance model as well. Sarah, I will share the link with you after the session. So I will share the link where we spoke about that. Okay, let's quickly go through the questions, and then we can chat about the one of the case study where it will hopefully help people to spark some conversations and ideas on how to actually communicate the impact of the design system when you are on the level 4. And we will also can talk about the level 2 and level 3. I feel like the shortcut there is just to use Figma Analytics, because that gives you a quick sense of the adoption and the usage across your teams. Love it. Okay, great. Let's go through the questions. From a practical standpoint, what are the key 5 metrics you report to your manager to demonstrate the design system's impact?
Depends. It just depends. A design system is a mirror of your organizational values. So metrics are evidence of. You don't want to say, it's going great. What are we optimizing for? And then if we're aligned on what are we really trying to optimize for, then we can talk about that success. So if you're really just like, look, we want full coverage, we just want one, then adoption is going to be your metric. If you're like, actually, what we really need is brand expression and flexibility, and so you're going to have a different metric. You're going to see, I mean, for this one could be how many people are contributing to it to make sure that it's a flexible enough system, or it could be engagement. It could be anything. So I think from a practical standpoint, I would just say, my God, use your judgment so hard and understand, what is your business trying to do? What is the org doing? How are people creating the UI? And does your design system reflect and bottle that magic? And how can you show evidence of that? Metrics are just evidence.
Yeah, I would second that. I think it's really a holistic approach, visual of overall metrics, whether it's your adoption of a certain component or features that you're shipping, or it's really qualitative from a survey that you sent out, what people like about the system or not, or your day to day from your Slack channel, support channels that you're coming in and having these conversations, as well as looking at the initiatives that are coming online. The metrics themselves you might not pull one of them and say, like, adoption's through the roof, right? Or this is through, this is doing well. We haven't had so many Slack questions, so to speak. I think you should really start thinking about how your team is really interacting with the business units, particularly, and how you're helping them formulate your decision. So your decision shouldn't be made in a vacuum to say, hey, let's just build 6 more components that are just randomly done and randomly selected, or let's redo our semantics on our tokens because we think we can do it better because I read this awesome article from so and so. Like, those aren't things that really drive impact. They might be, symptomatic or like consequential at the end where folks feel like it's better, but it should really be tied and back aligned to the teams of how those initiatives, because that's how you're going to converse with these business units, and that's how they're going to understand, to be like, hey, we're revamping our sign-in, and like, cool, we're actually going to be re-looking at our inputs and our form inputs, and maybe we're working around forms, and data gathering is something that we want to rally around. So how can we help support those teams? So I feel like those metrics are a bit easier to understand rather than just relying on like the same ones. I think it's probably going to be a rotating cast of, like Natalia said, depending what you're working on.
To rhyme a little bit on what you both just
Love it.
said, for instance, the different people will have different metrics that they'll be looking at, right? Like, so product people are gonna probably like, hey, how much money we're spending on this versus how much we're getting out of it. But your design manager, for instance, is like, oh, are the designers happy with what they have? Are you improving their designer experience? Are you giving them a way to work faster? And so these all are things that need to be measured differently. I think adoption ends up being like a very talked about metric, but it's actually a type of metric according to the amazing guide that Romina has on the design systems guide. But the reality is, at some point that we were discussing adoption with the mobile design system at Volvo, and people were like, "Oh, we got to increase adoption in engineering," and I was like, "Yeah, but we're never gonna get 100% adoption because not everything in the app can be design system. There's gonna be custom stuff. There's gonna be snowflakes, not because of rework, but because you're just testing a new feature and you don't know if you're gonna spend more time on it or anything like that. So I would say like, yeah, adoption in itself is like you're never gonna want to get 100%. So what are you learning with adoption? I think adoption is almost a signal instead of a metric. It's almost like, okay, why aren't people adopting this? Is it because of the system? Is it a culture thing? Is it like lack of skills in the team? All of those things signal that you're gonna have to do some user research to figure it out.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's a signal. And then the second question should always be like, of what? What are we getting evidence of? It could be so many different things. And that's why I say it's a calibration exercise. The metrics are the evidence of where you think your design system might need more balance. Is it more, spend more time helping product designers? Focus on the engineering side of it. Only you know what you're optimizing for, what the business goals that you're aligning with are. And I think if you try to use somebody else's metrics and somebody else's ruler and somebody else's you're going to have a bad time because it's not going to fit your organization. The whole point of a design system is it's yours and it's a reflection of the business. Respecting that relationship, like we just show you what we reflect you back to you and save up the patterns that you have created. Sometimes we're in a guidance role, of course, but it's always in a relationship. Like it's a conversation back and forth. So metrics, like if you lead with metrics and say, we should change this metric and see, great, by moving what needle?
Hmm. Love it,
Yeah, I want
love
to
it.
speak particular on the manager piece, just as like I know that was part of the question. If your manager, if they're a direct report for like design systems, or they're just like a general design manager and you just happen to be working on systems, I think what has helped me in the past is I've used a tool called Discovery Tool on Jira, particularly that just lets people kind of add ideas, and we were able to add impact versus effort, and we refine those on a biweekly basis. I demonstrate and talk to my manager regularly about them. So the question around like what is the metric, I can literally just show them like an impact matrix that is really speaking about the work that I'm doing, that is still aligned to these larger kind of feedback and intake methods that people are telling us about the design system. And ideally we're moving that, towards actually tackling that. So I would say like using tools like that where you're regularly working with your manager and talking with them shouldn't be something that should come out as a surprise for them to be like, well, what do these metrics come from, or why is this metric so low, and so to speak. So I would recommend that as like regular cadence with your manager, keeping them informed and just having like a very transparent way of tracking the work and demonstrating the work by itself without you needing to share it.
Love it, love it. I guess the summary for the all the discussions, there are so many data points that you can measure, but again, you need to understand what is your objective of the company and how design system team helps to support it. It might be the adoption. So if you already showed the value of the design system and you are only serving 20% of the organization, how the impact will scale if you will start supporting 40%, like 2 times more impact, right? The second thing, another good motivator is the compliance. So maybe you will focus more on the product accessibility compliance percentage or compliance score, or you would like to focus on the product consistency or the customer satisfaction scores based on the design systems. Like it's hard to connect these two worlds together, but like those are the stories that you can share. Again, there are so many data points that you can measure. And thank you, Tiago, for sharing the design system guide metrics bank. This is like really good resource. But again, it all depends. You need to start with your organizational OKR and how design system team supports the organizational OKR on a higher level. Great. I feel like we answered this question. The second one, design system impact varies across teams and levels. How do you document those differences and what tools do you use?
I want to give a shout out to Datadog.
Yes.
Yeah, at the post we actually had an issue around like we wanted to drive impact on our design system, and we were making the latest changes to kind of engineering DevX, right? Like quality of life there. But we needed people to be on the latest. We had so many different teams on different packages. How do we get that? And so we used that little matrix that you can build in Datadog to kind of scour all of our repos and just tell us what version everyone was on. And we made like really cool matrices that just showed us, where should we be reaching out to? Who should we be reaching out to? And we actually found like, oh, this specific team is like on the oldest version, and how do we get them? What's the friction there? What's really bothering them? And so we talked to them particularly, and it was our CSS like framework at the time that we have since evolved. And we shared with them like, hey, we are supporting the legacy piece, and you can now use this new CSS framework, and it should help, in that adoption migration piece. And you just need to get on the latest. And so we worked with them, collaborated with them, and got them on the latest, which ultimately was like the last straw to unlocking dark mode for the rest of the Washington Post. And it was such a huge thing. And I just want to give a shout out to Datadog because it helped us understand that data. This is not advertisement. I just really liked it. So that was like one of the tools that we use in addition to like, your kind of traditional analytics around your teams. But I couldn't get that from Figma Analytics or anywhere else because it's just like always on the latest. It's never necessarily like who's using that version.
Okay, I paid Brian to say that. No, since you mentioned it, I'll give you some history. Natalia, how'd you end up at Datadog from GitHub? You were on Primer. What happened? Look, back in the day, in the long, long ago, like 12 years ago, the original software engineer at GitHub who abstracted away some Sass variables and Primer, was born. John Rohan, got a name drop. He also was the amazing engineer who set up our Datadog dashboard to measure Primer and our metrics and how things were going there. So I was a fan of Datadog for a long time because it was like, if you look at this chart here, that means this. And I was able to, like, a good chart goes a really long way. Like, I can talk about it all I want, but having a Primer dashboard was awesome. And it tells a story when you can really pull a bunch of different things together. Advice for everybody. Now I'm like there, so I feel like this is super biased, but it's like a fan of my own stuff.
Drop your promo code.
But whoever your engineer is who set up your Datadog stuff, get them to set up a thing for your design system. Like it helped me out a lot personally, and it escalated. Now I'm at Datadog, so.
Love it, love it, love it. This is great. So answering to the question, I guess there are different BI tools, right? Datadog is one of the options. So here's another example of using Microsoft products. If you have access to those with Power Automate, Data Mart, and Power BI, the complexity here is when you are on the level 4, the amount of data points that you will need to pull from product teams, from design system teams, from the engineering teams is a little bit more complex than usual. So that's why it will be great to have data engineer on the side, making sure that this person helps you with setting up all the data pipelines, all the APIs, so that you have all the data shaped in the way that you need, and then you can create different dashboards for the different user needs that we discussed here. I feel like there is like, and here's the preview of one of those things. So here I just like analyzed all the private APIs for Figma that helped me to pull more additional insights rather than just like public API that they had at the time. And just by going through every available data, understanding what kind of data points are important, and then moving and connecting all of those together, that will help you to create this kind of data management pipeline. There are like, here's like the quick overview of like my mental model, how I think about the metrics is, first of all, you start with your work environment. Here's the input for all your data. It could be design tools, it could be engineering tools, it could be product tools, or any other things, right? So you are defining, okay, from when it comes to design, we can pull data from Figma. When it comes to engineering, we can pull things from GitHub. Then you need to think about the metrics management hub, and this is the part for the level 4 of design systems where you need to have a data engineer who will help you to think about the data ingestion, data storage, data mapping, transformations, hygiene and quality, data visualizations, data automation. And then the last part, when you have all of that, you have the proper data, and now it's a part of shaping them into the dashboards and making sure that it's not only readable for other people, but also you can start thinking about creating custom integrations with your Figma or GitHub or maybe MCPs where people could pull the data from the metrics management hub that you've created as a part of your design system. Love it. Let's go to the next question. In engineering, we can get data points relatively easy. Our bigger challenges is to get data points on the design side, tracking the amount of bugs in Figma or if a component falls out of sync to dev. Do you face similar issues?
Yes.
Spoiler. Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Oh, wait, no, I'll take
No.
no, that's a unique problem. Only unique to you. No one.
By the way,
So you
what is bugs in Figma? That's just design workflow.
Yeah, I was gonna say a hot take, or maybe it's not a hot take. Is this like, does it really matter? And I'll say like Figma, notoriously good, notoriously bad, whatever you want to choose, what camp you're in. There are so many gaps between code and what designers can actually do in Figma. And I think at some level, we got to have some grace to be like, it's okay. I think when we rely on other tools, such as in the past, I've used things like Zeppelin or now with Figma's Code Connect, or ways to just connect components closer to code, that is probably more important to me when someone's using it, trying to get the intent of the design and it's as close as possible. And those closeness might be like API matching or maybe the ability of the functionalities and states that need to be shown up in Figma. But if a designer, goes and detaches and does these things, like there's an understanding that they need to communicate with the developer that, hey, I made these changes, I detached it from it, but it's still like something I wanted to do. It's just more of like a friction. Like we didn't get slots. We still don't have slots until they, they shipped them, right? And that was like a lot of times people had to detach for that. Does it mean they're not using the tooltip? No, they're using it. It's just that it's a function of Figma's limitation at the time. So I would say like syncing with devs, I put that onus on the design system team if you do have one, is that you guys are shipping together, working together, aligning API and properties, having a working documentation, almost a working agreement around what those properties are. And that should help mitigate at least the issue of, the starting place of what is available for a component. But at the end of the day, to me, Figma is gonna do Figma. It's gonna do what it wants. And I think it's up to us to really empower and help our designers understand how to utilize the system. And Figma is just a tool to represent a portion of our system. It doesn't fully represent it. And that's because it's just limited. And that's just the reality of it.
I see the part of the question that's saying the challenge is to get data points on the design side. So to me, it seems like how are we aware? Because I have said this a million times. Human vigilance is not a strategy, but for the longest time, especially in design systems, we've had to play the role of fun police or quality police because we are watching super hard. We're all over the place watching, which makes us also not always the favorite people when we come knocking and we're like, actually, your design is off from code. And if you want to get this in production, you need to. There are so many exciting developments happening right now where, because I think we're like universally saying, okay, the source of truth is the code. That's where the final version of your idea lives. How can we automate as much as possible the connection between the live code and all of the design abstractions that we have? I think this is where I think engineers can really step in and say, look, we need design infrastructure and tooling and all of the internal stuff to help support the design discipline for your organization. So just like you set up lending on engineering side, there are a lot of really cool things you can do to alleviate the human vigilance aspect of how you keep your system in sync and the coherence of it. Lead with empathy and infrastructure, I think, is the best way. And if you're trying to get a signal on these things, sometimes it's all engineering your way through it and using the latest and greatest tools that are coming out. I don't know if you saw, Schema was all about design systems this time and the connection between code and I don't know, I think it's an exciting time for that, but it's a universal problem we've all been trying to solve with just grit and human attention, and that's painful.
Love it, love it.
Yeah.
Great. I agree that, yeah, I agree with the design of Figma Analytics. It can be a good starting point, but like the code or even the product might be better signals because in design, if you will have a discovery with specific team, you will see a huge spike in the design system usage, but it doesn't mean that it actually will go to the production. The end user will see that or not, right? So yeah, Tiago, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to like maybe like give you, because we're talking about things like components getting out of sync, and Unfortunately, the answer in design is you can do it manually. Like I pasted a little bit of like the Notion database that I kept for a year and a half until we reached like 100% alignment. And then when I basically inherited this design system that was already kind of being built, but not really published, we had like 35 components in Figma. Out of the 35, only 7 were aligned with Android and 9 on iOS, so it was like less than 20%. And it was like a
Hmm.
complete chaos because the designers would use components and then the engineers would be like, yeah, but this doesn't exist and it's in the design system. Is this ready? Is this being worked on? So that was like main support thing in the beginning, right? Until I actually added like a little documentation thing in Figma saying, oh, this is in Figma, not on Android and not on iOS, or just on Android, and like at least try to give them a way to self-serve there.
Hmm.
So
Love
yeah,
it.
the
This
the
is
tooling
really
in
great.
design needs like a lot of love. But as usual, like design gets done prioritized, so it's just us hoping that someone's gonna, oh wait, we need to do tooling for design.
Love it, love it. This is a like really good example of how like one of the metrics that you can capture, right, is the alignment between different disciplines and different design systems that you have, design libraries or code libraries. Love it. Let me check other questions. Yeah, we answered the first, the second. Design system impact varies across teams and levels. How do you document those differences and what tools do you use? We also answered that. How do you calculate the amount of money saved by using a design system? Sometimes that efficiency gain metric is hard to quantify.
That's one where I'm just really tired of answering that question. Why are we talking about efficiency and saved money when we're talking about infrastructure? And this is one I would say pushback. Is this really where an organization wishes to cut corners? Okay, but every successful company at scale that is doing fine has a design system, and the rest we don't hear about. It's like that schematic of the airplane where they're like, the plane's coming back from war. Look at the places where the bullet holes are. Let's reinforce those. And they're like, no, the planes that aren't coming back, that's where one bullet hole takes them down. Like it's that, look it up, Google it. It's like it's a whole thing. I feel like we mentioned it in design a lot. But it's the idea, is just like, is the conversation really about saving money? If it is, I would say as leaders, it's our role to reframe it at this point, because I think we're established and mature enough as an industry to reframe it. That's all I'm gonna say. We can't keep doing this. Can't do it.
I
Love it, love it.
100% agree with you.
Oh, go ahead, Tiago. Go ahead, Tiago.
Yeah, but I can also add that, like, for instance, like between the US and other places of the world, the maturity of companies in technology kind of varies. I would just say that it's not hard to quantify. It's giving like a number value to your design system is actually quite easy. I think I shared like an article explaining exactly how you can break it down. Just be aware that just because you put a number on it doesn't mean you're going to get resources and prioritization or anything like that, because hey, when someone's interests are in not understanding that your point of view, there's no point, right? You can't convince someone
Sometimes they've already made their
that
mind
they
up.
should, right? Like they already made their mind. They don't think the design system is important. If you want to try it. It works. It doesn't work. So when I bring back that scenario where I had to prove it, it didn't work with the person. It actually worked with their managers. So their manager said like, "Hey, we're
Love it.
gonna give this team like a shot." So you got to go do the basically the political campaign, like go on the road and be talking with other managers above that person to see if someone like sees the light almost.
I need to add it. Political campaign. This is really good.
Oh yeah, design system is all about politics. I was just gonna add there that if you really wanted to, like, if someone asked me, I would grab a piece of napkin and then just like write, "This is how much I think it is." Like, it doesn't to me like efficiency is such a relative word. What we see as efficient, I know teams that are working on design systems that are so efficient, at least they perceive it as efficient. It's code connected, it works, everybody, but nobody's using it. And so, wow, it's super efficient, but now teams haven't adopted it. And so now you look like a waste of money. Efficiency is really relative to what that person perceives efficiency as. And so I think the more agnostic you can get around that conversation, like truly objective efficiency, when we say, hey, you can witness, going back to our other metrics of like people utilizing the components, it may not even, it doesn't even have to be the best code or the best design. It's like people are using it, right? Like I know of teams that like they just built what was already existing and they just wanted to be more efficient. That's an efficient system, right? A lot of times we think of systems that it's gonna increase our design language and it's gonna make it more poppy and cool and all these other things. That could be it, but doesn't quite say like, is that the most efficient way to get there, right? I would argue sometimes it's just let people be experimental and let that land before it comes into the system. So I would just like, yeah, yeah, to Tiago's point, you could definitely quantify in some fashion, some napkin math, all that stuff. But really, you should really frame the conversation around what is it that you're trying to learn about this particular word efficiency, and what kind of efficiency are we talking about? Conversations at the handoff standpoint, is it efficiency to delivery of production? Is it efficiency in terms of the beginning of the discovery phase for designers knowing what to pull from? Like, first define efficiency for that person before you pull any numbers, because the number you might spend your time trying to pull and quantify might be totally irrelevant to what they're trying to talk about, because efficiency is just a really relative term.
I have another
Love it,
hot
love it.
take in this conversation. I think the people who are coming to design system leaders and saying, how efficient are you? How much money are you making me? Are also the ones who take the heaviest hand and ruin it. A design system is an ecosystem. You pave the paths where people walk them. The best design systems I've seen are the ones where a couple of designers and engineers are like, you know what? What if we, and they build something that's organic and grassroots and really does serve the needs, because people will find the most efficient way to do things. Creative, capable people will build miracles for you. It's often in that top down, let's optimize for 100% adoption. It's like, you're going to get something weird. You're going to get something weird that's not organic. And people are going to be like, I didn't ask for this. What do you mean? So just understanding that a design system, it's in the name, it's a system. And it's the same way, like in an ecosystem, you introduce an invasive species and it just destabilizes the whole thing. It's also a fragile balance because you're having to, between design, between engineering, the business, the everything, you're constantly trying to maintain a balance where everybody thrives and everybody is able to benefit from the energy that they put in. So for me, it's almost, I really want to make sure that the mental model we're all working under is that this has to have the ability to breathe. The metrics we have are there to calibrate and make sure it's a healthy ecosystem. And you don't just squeeze life out of it by saying, let's crank it up to 11 and make it the most efficient. You're going to kill it. You're going to kill it. And people are going to be like, I don't want any of this anymore. Because I don't know if you notice, like everything we're talking about here is just people. It's not about buttons or the components or the plugins or the tooling. We're just talking about people collaborating together, trying to make impossible things happen. And at the end of the day, we have to keep that focus on just it's not the metrics, it's the people. And how do we know we're doing right? That's it.
Agree. Great. So just to summarize, when it comes to data points, right, we discussed that there are like design, it can be Figma on the code, it can be GitHub, and you can run GitHub actions or analyze the code base usage. But the third thing is the product that is like actually harder to measure. But I would like to share quickly the way how you can do that is by using Infa. And if you can measure things locally for free, you don't need to pay anything. But when you tagged all your components in the browser, you can go into the measure tab and will actually tell you how much percentage of the design system components are being used when it comes to visual real estate ratio. So you could say that this specific page or profile page has 20% visual adoption. Again, the goal is never get to 100%. This is like unreal and not needed. But with the Pro, you can actually have access to the API and publish those reports as well. So let me show you how you can quickly also import all, when you tagged everything, you can quickly import everything into the FigJam or different Power BI systems. It will take some couple seconds, but here, as you can see here, it pulls the screenshots of all the pages that you've tagged in the browser and will tell you if you have a report for this specific page, it will tell you the coverage metrics, how much the DOM coverage per this page of your design from your design system is coming from, and what's the visual coverage per this page, with some details around the viewport, how many components here, and the top components by the coverage. So it will tell you that, okay, when it comes to the visual real estate ratio adoption per product per page, the promo card, nudge, navigation option, and empty state pattern and card components are contributing to the most of your success when it comes to the product. So just to summarize, on design, you can measure Figma, on the code, you can measure GitHub, and on the product, like with some of the extensions, you can do that as well. Love it. And if you would like to try it out at the pro version, there is a promo code available here as well. So thank you. And the next part that I want to talk about is the maybe data points. Here is one interesting thing that might again spark some interesting conversations. We spoke about different ways how you can come up with the proper data storyline. We spoke about the data points, and there's so many data points that you can measure. Here is the way how you can communicate the impact. And again, you using different BI tools like Datadog or the Power BI or anything else. Here's like dashboards that you can create for different audiences. As you can see here, there are like 4 main levels of dashboards. It starts with contributions, how many external contributions our design system gets, if you are interested in that, right? If you are moving into more federated governance model. The performance dashboard that talks about the performance of your design system team, the amount of tickets created and closed and resolved. And the third one is the adoption dashboard. This is my favorite. This will tell that, okay, how much of your team you are serving at the moment, right? You can say like, now we are serving only 20% on Figma, we are serving only 10% of GitHub repositories on the GitHub, and we are serving only like 30% of the product adoption per domain using Infa. And the last one is the impact. So let me dive deeper into the product adoption. And this is the way how you can pull data from Figma on the usage data, activity data, and team level adoption, and summarize everything and merge everything into the product adoption with the code adoption. And for the impact, again, this is nice theory, but in practice, it's not working. Like in Agile, people are always thinking about the lead and cycle time. So this is the metric that will help you to tell how much time on average we can resolve epic or one story in Jira or any other issue tracking systems. And by calculating that on average, it takes us 3 weeks to close an epic. 3 weeks is too short. For enterprise, 2 months to close the epic, the lead and cycle time will tell you, and you can start comparing apples to apples with the teams who are using the design system and who are not using the design system. So you could say that people who are using the design system, on average, the lead time for closing epic tickets is 20% less. But the problem is they're always people, the way how they create epics and stories are different, or initiatives are different. So that's why it's really hard to compare apples to apples. The next one that might be interesting is reliability impact, where you can say how much less bugs people have if they are using design system or not. So if you have a good sample size, it's like large enterprise organization, and you can take a look into repositories or teams who are using design system and not, hopefully you will see a signal that people who are using design system have less bugs reported. And monetary impact, this is the way how you can summarize everything. Some of the assumptions that you can make. Every time when designer is pulling a component out of the Figma library, we are saving 3 seconds. And by going into the Figma analytics, you will able to see the usage data, the activity data, how many component insertions. And usually within large enterprise organizations, it's hundreds of thousands per month. And by multiplying by 3 seconds, you could say on average how much time you are saving just by the usage. So yeah, this is like a quick overview. Tiago, Brian, you've added a couple more things. Do you want to elaborate? You're muted, sorry.
Classic remote life. Sorry about that. Yeah, I just put lean on impact. To me, I find most successful, and just kind of reiterating a lot of the points that we're speaking about here is you could take those qualitative or quantitative metrics, but lean heavily on the storytelling of the human part of it. Like, at the end of the day, what we do is helping humans work better together. I know the talk is all about robots right now and how AI is supposed to consume everything, but the best thing that we can do is lean on the human parts of it. And I just kind of rely on these things as like a metric to kind of bubble up to. Is what I'm doing useful? Like, it's the most useful thing. Am I building trust, or is it taking away trust if I, make this breaking change after I promised people it was going to be stable? Is it creating emotional relief? Our work is stressful at times. It shouldn't have to be. Can design system, is it adding stress? Is it reducing stress in that world? Mental model of like, is it easy to learn? Like, are my tokens completely crazy and only I understand them because they're like 6 dots in till you finally get it? And does the user have control? Because a lot of the conversation around design system is like, I'm forking over control, giving up control for someone else to do that for me. And that takes a lot of confidence in all these other things for us to adopt or drive impact into the work that they're doing. So giving that, whatever quantitative metrics you're pulling, let them bubble up to more human ones. These are the ones I use. You don't have to use them, but I try to drive around those storytelling so people truly feel like they're being heard as a person and less so as a number on a total graph.
I just want to say I'm so glad you said that. Why are we talking about efficiency so much and so little about trust? I often say a design system is the stable, trusted layer of the UI. And that's what allows other teams to experiment, because we know that this is the stable, trusted layer that you reach into this, you're gonna get, what you get, and it's good. And yeah, we're just trying to help people collaborate better. That's it. I love that.
Tiago, you've added a couple more notes here. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I
Let
wanted
me
to give
follow you.
people a way to get to this kind of like metrics when they don't have you, Farid, working, and or anyone that kind of makes data or understands how to work with data. Good old user surveys and user interviews, right? Like an example here is like the survey that I did when I started using Mentimeter, 100% anonymous. I actually did 3 different surveys, like one for European like team, one for the Chinese team, one for the team in the US, and to see also compare like does their experience change? Like do they feel more supported, less supported? So you could kind of inform yourself of all of that. And then user interviews are perfect, right? Like it even answers the question of how do you track different teams? Well, you talk with the people who are using the design system. You get them in a room, you talk for half an hour, you figure out like what they're having trouble with, and if you can help. If you can't help, you kind of point them somewhere. Hopefully, you can give them some kind of article to read or some kind of hope. But most of the times, you can actually help a little bit.
This is great. We had so many good discussions. Let me quickly summarize. So you can map the complexity of measuring and creating these data management workflows and pipelines based on your maturity of your design system. As Tiago mentioned, like the easiest and the best way to start will be the surveys and qualitative feedback from the interviews and just by talking with people. On the level 1 and level 2, you can start using some metrics from Figma that is like already built in. You can use some open source libraries on the GitHub to at least track which kind of repositories are pulling your library, adding your package npm design system libraries into their repositories, and how much often they are being called within the files. On the level 3, I believe this is the place where design, code, and product all connected to each other, and things like Tiago mentioned, like making sure that we are connected and focusing on those metrics might be really interesting and valuable here, because that will tell you how much we are connecting to each other. And on the level 4, if you are moving into like more advanced and your design system is supporting multiple products, using BI tools where you can create data pipelines and have this like very holistic understanding, and creating more advanced dashboards that will require additional team members. The data engineer is a must here, but it will help you to tell more holistic picture and also give different dashboards for different perspectives. I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining the session. It was really interesting and like really, really insightful. Thank you, Natalia, Brian, Tiago. I would highly recommend following them on LinkedIn. If you still have any questions, feel free to reach out to them. I hope they are okay with that. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure chatting with all of you.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
so
It's
much.
Yeah,
really great.
it was nice to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.